Coming up on the Bold Cafe podcast.
Let's put it another way. Say if I'd put on 2 stone, I guarantee you he wouldn't have said that to me. We always have a laugh and a joke, and we got some girls over, and they were like, "Oh, guess our ages," and then they're like, "Oh, guess who's the oldest?" And like they all youngish woman cutting my hair, and she's going through it, and just says, "Oh, so your dad's gone bald, has he?" And I was like, we met this young guy from Manchester or whatever, and he was probably about 20, and my mate took my beanie off, and he was like, "Oh, enough's enough. I'm going to do it." I'd taken pictures. I could see it really going at the top, and I went to my barber. It took me a lot of courage to go into the barber shop. I sat down in the chair and I was like, "It's time. I want you to take it off." And he looked at me, moved my head around, pointed, went like that. "No, you're not ready yet."
Right, I won't slurp all the way through this.
No worries.
But I do enjoy good tea. Right, you know what? Shall we kind of just roll into it?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
obviously, I got to say, it was, I'm actually buzzing to be doing this again.
Yep.
With all the audio gear out, the headsets, the cameras. And you obviously mentioned, when we met up in Boston Tea Party.
Yep.
Other cafes are available. We could do this in person.
Yep.
And mate, I'm genuinely so grateful. This has been great to get to know you and have this
likewise.
chat. And I'm excited to hear kind of a bit more detail, because obviously we talked about it and stuff.
Yep.
But a bit more detail about your journey through through hair loss.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Through dealing with it.
Yep.
So, where do you want to just start at the beginning?
Yeah,
And
I
the
can
kind of
do.
origin story.
Yep.
How, even if you want to preface it with like whether you ever gave it a thought before or growing up, however you want to start, mate. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I guess I'd start as like, a youngster growing up, always had like a huge full head of hair, I guess growing up in Plymouth, like the style was just to grow it as like long as possible. And I always had like, I guess like a bit of a flat mop, but yeah, really long. I guess like never really thick, but it was always just so long and dark, and didn't really think anything would ever happen to it, to be honest. And then it was probably around sort of when I left school and when I first started going to university. So we're talking like 2010, and then I would sort of notice like quite a bit of hair falling out like on the pillows and stuff like that, which I guess happens to everyone, but I guess I noticed it a bit more.
Okay, so you did actually see some signs early on.
Yeah.
But did you correlate that with, you say like everyone notices that, and obviously I think everyone does, but did you correlate that with I'm going bald, or
No,
okay.
Not at that stage. It was just like, oh, okay, quite a bit of hair there, and back in those days, I'd like grow my hair for like 2 or 3 months, and then get a haircut and get it short, and then it would grow back long and stuff like that. And it was just, one of those things, and you never really thought about it.
Yeah.
So throughout university, no issues whatsoever. Just run my hands through my hair, and using product as well, and that was one. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but that was one of the first things when you stop using product, because when you're using the product, it looks worse, and then when you stop using the product, you're like, oh god, okay,
Right.
yeah.
So at uni, what sort of style were you rocking through uni? Short back and sides?
No, I'd like leave it quite long, and it would be a bit of matte clay through there to hold it up throughout the day.
You went to Exeter, didn't
I
you?
did.
And Exeter's a little bit more rah-rah, no?
It is,
yeah.
exactly. So the long hair there, and looking back at some of those pictures, it was like so long. Like, I couldn't even imagine that right now. So, very different.
Okay, so this is kind of the first foundation, I guess, of the hair and little signs. I guess more now, so it's probably where you are now. Looking back, you can see, oh, maybe that was like a bit of a sign. So tell me about like the first time when actually like male pattern baldness and going bald like came on the radar for you.
Yeah, so it would probably have been 2016. So
how old are you there?
So I would have been 24 then. So I was going to my cousin's wedding in Austria, and my sister had been on to me, oh, you need to get a haircut before you go to the wedding. And this would have been, I think the wedding, we were leaving on the Friday, living in London at the time, went to Wandsworth Headmasters, I think. Never been there before. And youngish woman cutting my hair, and she's going through it and just says, "Oh, so your dad's gone bald, has he?" And I was like, "No, no, no. My dad's got a full head of hair." And she was like, "Oh, right, okay," and was sort of going, back and forth through the hair, and that was probably like the first alarm bell, I would say, because it never really properly had sort of came to my attention at all until that day.
Yeah.
So got the haircut, and then went to the wedding, and my cousin who was getting married, his sister was there, and she was engaged to a bald guy. And I don't know, we were talking about it on the bus back from the evening, so it was probably about midnight, and we all had a few drinks. And Aaron said to me, he said, "Oh, looks like you're going a bit there, Tom, as well." And Charlotte was like, no, he isn't, Aaron, shut up. And so yeah, that was sort of like 2016, where I guess it was maybe getting a tiny bit noticeable, but nothing like severe.
Right.
But that's really probably when I first started noticing it.
And what was it, like the hairline, or was
it was definitely the hairline.
Right.
Because I remember going back to another hairdresser's a couple of months later, and I actually did ask the guy, and I was like, "Am I going bald?" And he was like, No, you're fine. Like, there's a bit at the front, but nothing at the back. Don't worry, you're all good on the back." And that's when you need to start worrying. So
Okay.
I was still okay at the time. So 2016, when it sort of started, but it was nowhere near like the head shave or anything like that. It was absolutely fine.
Right. So that, I guess that guy also saying to you like, "No, mate, you're fine," reassured you.
Yeah,
a bit, coming
absolutely.
from what seems like a professional almost at the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said he was like an expert in cutting men's hair and stuff like that.
Right.
So I was still feeling pretty good in 2016.
And so how did it kind of ramp up from there then? At this time, you're not feeling insecure about it, or you're not really.
No.
It's just kind of come onto the scene, come onto the radar, but
yeah,
nothing to impact your life or change, how you behave or anything like that.
No, not at all.
Walk me through the next kind of few steps then of the stages. When does it reach like the next stage for you?
Yeah, so I always remember we did a boys' holiday. So we were a great group of friends at university. We sort of played Friday night football together and are still best mates now. So we call ourselves DDFC. And we had a boys' trip to Miami in the summer of 2018. And maybe I sort of started noticing it a bit more, and I like kept on wearing a cap. And I remember we were at a bar, and my mates, we always have a laugh and a joke, and we got some girls over, and they were like, "Oh, guess our ages," and then they're like, "Oh, guess who's the oldest?" And like they all pointed to me.
Oh, really?
And I had the cap on, and like then I was like, "Oh God, okay, like maybe it's not time to ditch the cap, but maybe I just need to like own it a bit more." And I was sort of a bit of the brunt of the jokes, I'd say, for the whole trip, and it all sort of kicked off when like one of the guys, like we were on the dance floor, and like he threw my hat away, and I hated that so much, like I guess the cap is sort of like helps you cope with it, and then he'd like knocked it away, and I got pretty angry and stuff like that, and it was always gone down as like Capgate within our little group.
Oh, really?
And that was 2018, and then I remember comments like, "Oh, you're looking a little dishevelled there, Tom, with your hair," and stuff like that. But that was when like it really got to me, and it's just banter at the end of the day, and I would banter with my mates as well on other things, but like that, maybe then it was just like, "Oh, this is really getting on me." Yeah.
It was a sore subject, and then obviously you're trying to do what you can to kind of manage that, those feelings, and the classic, got your hat, or just they know, right?
Exactly.
So, and
exactly.
Probably having a few drinks or whatever, and it's like, wait.
Yeah.
So this is about 2 years on from that first, when you're in the getting your hair cut, right, and they first mention it in the wedding. But why do you think you started to wear the hat more? Do you know what I mean? Because like obviously there's a change in you between someone's mentioned it, but whatever, to like now I'm kind of wearing hats a lot. What was it that changed?
I guess probably because I couldn't do the stuff with my hair like I used to be able to do. You know, I'd used to put product in it and like product would make it look quite good, but it was just like, it was thinning quite a bit. So it was getting more and more challenging to do stuff with it. And then when you're going out and it's just like thin and it's just like constantly trying to work it and move it. And I guess that's probably why I sort of turned to the hat game.
Right, okay. It was easier just to throw on a hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because I guess when you've got the hat on, you're not worrying about it as much. But, you know, as I know from the channel, the hat's just like a temporary fix. It's never going to work long term.
And speaking about like temporary fixes and working long term, are you speaking to anyone about this? Are you on your own? Are you online doing any research? You know, how were you kind of trying to, I guess, navigate, you know, this change that you're experiencing?
Yeah, I guess sort of like talking to guys as well about it, like a good friend of mine at work who was sort of bald himself, and I was, you know, I'm worried about my hairline and stuff like that, and he's like, I hadn't really noticed, you know, and I think he was being genuine at that point because it wasn't severe by then, but I'd started noticing it, other people had started noticing it, and that's when you start taking the pictures, you know, like back of the head, front of the head, and that's the sort of position I was at the moment, but still, you know, fairly confident, I must admit, but you could see the decline was starting to begin.
Right, this is pre-Hatgate, working up to Hatgate.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Okay. Well, and I guess just to expand a little bit on that question though, obviously, you know, when you go online, you type in going bald or what to do, I'm going bald, anything to do with it, you obviously, you know, get thrown up a lot of the solutions, you know, that are sold out there to various different things. You know, there's a whole spectrum. Where were you at with that sort of thing? Were you kind of like interested in them? Were you not interested in them? Were you just on the outskirts? Where were you at with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was never going to take any of the medication just because I don't think it's good for you. Yeah, that wasn't really for me.
Didn't appeal to you?
No, not at all. And then I guess back then, like, transplants weren't a huge thing. So that wasn't really like popping up on your you know, time feed and stuff like that. Whereas now it's constant turkey and all of that stuff. But back then, I guess it wasn't really a thing.
Okay.
Yep.
So in your mind, you weren't thinking, how do I stop this? How do I cover, you know, obviously, you're covering with the hats, but you're not like, I can't go bald. Or were you thinking that? Do you know what I mean? Because obviously you're not actively seeking out a cure, which some people do. You're also not like, I must get rid of this. You're just kind of going with the flow, are you?
Yeah, and I guess at that point, you don't think that it's going to happen as well. In denial is the wrong thing, but I'm thinking, maybe I'm just getting a bit older, or maybe, you know, my hair's always really been like this, and maybe it's just coming out a bit more. So I would say then it wasn't like, I'm going bald. It was like, maybe my hair's changing a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just seeing it more as like, this is a change.
Yeah.
Who knows? You're not thinking like, I'm going to be bald in like a year. You're thinking like,
absolutely not.
I'm getting older, so this kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's kind of reassuring to know you had some kind of like level-headedness with it. But obviously, still sort of, dare I call it, insecurity does seep in. We all want to feel like we look good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously it sounds like when you're going out or you just, you know, you're going to be around people, okay, you know, we've all had a bad haircut, or, you know, when like you feel like you need a haircut. Your hair's not looking good. That's a frustration, right? That's like, it doesn't look good. Or you put an outfit on and you're out and you think, I shouldn't have worn this. Like, I'm not really feeling it. Maybe, is that a good way to describe how you would feel about the hair at times?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just be like, let's just put the hat on. It's
exactly,
easier.
Exactly. And certainly, like, I would say, like, on a boys' holiday where, you know, you're in Miami, you're out and about, you're wearing lots of caps and stuff like that. It didn't feel like unnatural.
It was easier to navigate then.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hatgate happens. You're frustrated with that because your mates kind of mugged you off a little bit on the dance floor.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it.
Where does that go next then?
So, I'm in like a relationship at the time, and I guess I think less about it. I'm traveling a lot with work, so sort of doing 4 weeks away, 1 week back, 4 weeks away, 1 week back, sort of very busy. I guess maybe putting it to sort of the back of my mind, but I guess the next time I am still conscious about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm still probably thinking about it, every couple of weeks, and maybe one of those evenings I'll be taking the pictures. Oh, has it changed? What's going on? But it's probably not until that next summer, so 2019, where.
And how old are you then? Sorry.
So then I would have been sort of 27, 28
Okay.
then. And I'm going to a few weddings with my girlfriend at the time, and then when people are taking pictures, and just normal pictures, I'm like, wow, that really is starting to go a bit. At the front, we're still only at the front, and then sometimes you get some pictures when people are taking it at the side, and you're like, oh, it has gone back quite a bit. And again, I was still at that phase where it's not like, oh, it needs to shave off. It's like, okay, yeah, hair's changing, yeah, continuing to change.
How did it make you feel looking at those pictures like that?
Not horrendous, to be honest, at this stage. It's still like, it's a bit disappointing how your hair isn't the same as it was when you were, 20. But still getting through. But it's like, wow, that is a difference.
Okay, so it was more times like when you're not busy and occupied with other things, you were starting to be like confronted by it a bit more, right?
Yeah.
Right, with pictures. Pictures are the classic. But also you did say you were taking your own sort of progress pictures.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Okay.
And I would take them, and then sometimes I would just delete them straight after. I'd look at them, oh, okay, that's not too bad, or that's a bad one, delete, and then they'd go in that deleted folder, and sometimes I'd go back in and recover them. But
right.
It's like once you've got the evidence, it's like, okay, I've taken that, now I'll delete it, and yeah.
It's interesting, the progress picture one, because I'm guessing it's like two thought processes going into it. I'm not sure if this is how you felt, but you're thinking, right, I'm going to take the picture to either prove to myself that it is as bad as I think it is, or it's not as bad as I think it is. But either way, you're kind of left disappointed with either outcome.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of like a bad thing mental health wise to
absolutely
do. But we all do it. You want to know what it's looking like and things like that, right? And obviously pictures are the best way to do that, or videos. I always do that because it's quite hard to take pictures.
It is,
right?
it is. Yeah. And so much of it depends on like the light as well, and then that's quite a good angle. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was, and then I think as soon as you start taking the pictures, you're probably on that decline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pictures are happening, things like that. So when does it kind of escalate to it being sort of more on your mind, perhaps, and really kind of impacting your life a bit more so?
Yeah, so I guess now we're sort of going into sort of the pandemic years. So in 2020, I was in America for 3 months at the start of the year, and then moved back to the UK sort of just as the pandemic was beginning. And that was all planned. It was just a short 3-month assignment there. And then I guess during lockdown, everyone was sort of growing their hair long. It was one or the other, wasn't it? It was like you grow your hair long or you shave it. And I definitely wasn't in the shave camp, because I was like, well, if I shave it, maybe it'll never grow back. And it was getting very, very long, longer on the sides, but still okay. And I remember, just as we were sort of coming out of that first lockdown and you could go and get a haircut, a mate of mine who I knew from school had sort of trained to be a barber, and I went to his house and he cut it. And I think I went there wearing a cap and took it off. And I was like, oh yeah, Chris, I'm a bit worried about it. And he was like, oh no, honestly, you're okay. Like I wouldn't have thought you were receding or going bald. And he was like, we just got to get these bits a little longer, keep them a bit of length there, and yeah, you'll be okay. And I remember asking him, he was like, how do you know when you're going bald? And like, how do you know when like it's time to shave it off? And he just goes, well, I guess when you've got no hair. So that was like, I always remember that. That
Shout
was quite
out
funny.
to him, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So it's long, and then I had the cut, and then I moved to Guyana in South America sort of for my next assignment. And this was more long term, sort of 3 years. And I went there with, I would still say, a fullish head of hair. It wasn't, you wouldn't see me in the street and go, oh, wow, he's really balding,
Right.
I still had a fair bit of confidence there. So yeah, I moved there in sort of July, August, and was still feeling okay.
Okay, so you're making moves now in terms of your like personal life, your career.
Yeah.
Your mates kind of reassured you as well, like, no, you're fine, like you can keep going here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you move away.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it kind of things speed up a bit for you, right?
Yeah, I would say so. So I was dating a girl in Dallas, and then we sort of did the like long distance relationship thing, and then that Christmas, so I guess this is the Christmas of 2020, we went to Cancun and we had sort of 10 days holiday over there, and it was really good. But then I really started noticing it's very, very long and thick on the sides, and there really isn't much up top. And it was quite windy there, and like whenever there were pictures being taken, and I was like, oh God, this is starting to go.
So you would notice yourself being more like, I don't know, not paranoid about it, but preoccupied with it, or just more, it was coming to the forefront of your mind more so? Was it more often and things like that?
It was. And especially like, when the wind started picking up, it was like, wow, this is like getting out of control and looking really bad.
Right.
And that's, really when I'd stop using all the product completely. And it was just like, this is how I wake up. This is my hair. I can't do anything with it. It just sort of.
Had you given up on it a little bit, or?
Yeah, I guess by then I sort of had, yeah. And I was like, well, there's not much I can do here. Yeah, I guess I had really given up. Yeah.
Yeah, when I say give up, I just mean like trying to really kind of maintain the appearance of like a full head of hair and like really keep it styled and prim and proper. And it doesn't sound like you were at that point with it.
No, and I was still keeping it quite long then as well. And it wasn't until later on that I sort of went shorter and shorter and shorter, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Well, hat's still a thing for you.
Yeah. But when you're out to dinners in like this fancy Cancun resort, like there was no way I was going to wear a cap there. And I remember taking pictures of her on like the balcony and by the pool in the evenings, and like it was so windy, just my hair was looking awful.
Yeah. And so when you're in that moment and you're taking those pictures, are you thinking like, how's my hair looking?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think it was maybe became like a tick. As soon as like a picture was coming, it was like run my hands through my hair. It's got to look okay, and it was like almost impossible to manage. Yeah.
And you're losing it at the back now as well at this point, or not quite?
I guess it is thinning, but it's still more noticeable on the front, I would say.
Right. So more just the hairline going.
Yeah, exactly. But still very thin on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thin, wispy.
All those horrible words.
Yes, those horrible ways to describe it. Yeah. Sorry, you did say that earlier.
Yeah.
But the thing that really interests me is when it crosses over from. Look, I know I'm losing my hair. Like I'm afraid about it. I'm afraid of the future in terms of like how I'm going to look. And obviously I don't want to lose my hair. And I'm kind of speaking about my own experience here. But then it crosses over to where it actually starts to like impact your life in terms of like dictating things you do. Like places, I think we mentioned when we met in the coffee shop there, like, being a bit conscious about like overhead lights and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that really interests me about, these journeys. So where are you at that point now where you're noticing like, okay, this is kind of like impacting not how you live your life in terms of like your whole life, but just like small things in your life. It's kind of dictating things. Has it got to that point yet?
I wouldn't say like the light was really an issue, but certainly, like, I think it was impacting like a bit of my self-confidence. Yeah.
Right.
Where you're so used to like not worrying about something, and then it's almost like there's nothing you can do about it either. And that's maybe one of the frustrating things. Showering and stuff like that, and like going in the pool and like as soon as you get up from the water, like moving your hair back just to try and cover things up. So
right. Okay. So there were little things like that were happening. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The pool. Yeah. Those classics, especially with like the water, the elements, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, how they impact that. Okay, so this is, you're in South America now, working, still doing the long distance thing.
Yeah.
So keep going then, dude. Keep going. How do we get to the next bit?
So, me and the girl from Dallas decided to go our separate ways after it. I was living in a foreign country, she was living in America, and I think the distance was quite challenging. So, we're now heading into 2021. I'm back in Guyana, and I'm going out, a few drinks with colleagues and stuff like that, and I meet a very nice Guyanese girl, and we start dating, and she would come over and things like that, and she would start like running her hands through my hair, and she would be like, "Oh wow, your hair is so nice and soft," And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And, you know, she'd be running her hands through it. And then as soon as she'd get towards the back or like more towards the top of my head, I would maybe like move the hand away or change the subject. So then I really started noticing it. And, you know, when she was describing it as soft, you know, I guess it was soft, but it was more thin than soft, I would say.
So soft because it wasn't thick, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Which is an interesting sort of reverse compliment, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess at this point as well, I'd moved off whatever shampoo I'd be using at the time, and I'd moved on to that Alpecin caffeine shampoo.
Yeah. It's on. There used to be adverts for it.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff, didn't
did.
they?
Yeah, it's like that German caffeine
Yeah.
shampoo.
Yeah.
So I've been using that every day, and I think that made it less soft because I think that's one of their things that it
Dries it out or whatever.
Exactly. So, you know, that made it feel almost slightly thicker than if I'd use like a Head and Shoulders or whatever, and it's like, you know, paper thin. So yeah, that I thought maybe it, you know, it says it like stimulates hair growth. I thought, maybe
paper thin is brutal as well. But yeah, you know, it's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
So I thought, maybe that might, you know, help. It says it like stimulates growth and things like that. But I would buy it in bulk and, you know, like 8 bottles at a time, and I'd wash my hair with that every day. So that made it feel slightly thicker than it probably naturally was.
You met this Guyanese woman, right?
Yep.
And she's running her hands through your paper thin hair.
Yeah.
But interestingly, then, so obviously the pills and that didn't at the time, you know, before didn't resonate with you or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't appeal to you. But
Yep.
the caffeine shampoo, I guess you thought, I could try that.
Yeah.
Maybe this can like delay things a bit. Was that the thought process?
Yeah, it was, and I got so frustrated as well with like washing my hair with like normal shampoo and then it going like really, really soft, and like I did find that the Alpecin did make a bit of a difference on like firming it up a bit. Right. So yeah,
less kind of flop, like good flopping around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so but now obviously you notice like, so this is what I mean. That's like I would call that a real impact of hair loss where you're there with your woman, and you're like, yeah, maybe not, you know?
Exactly.
And that is, it's so interesting to me because obviously we're in our heads thinking, if she kind of, you know, if she feels that or kind of is aware of it, she's going to maybe find me less attractive, or she's going to be like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So you're like, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
But actually it's no, it's okay. That is unattractive.
Yeah,
you know, and that's that's the thing that always interests me. And I know we're going to get onto the dating, you know, thing as your story progresses. We talked about it in the cafe, right? Of how like you'll be stressing about, I'm unattractive because of the balding hair, but actually it's like what it's turning you into, the insecurity and all that, which is actually the real unattractive thing.
Yep.
So okay, mate. So yeah, keep going. Dude.
Okay.
Like, where do we go next?
So I guess we're still sort of in the pandemic, so I wasn't coming back to the UK that often, really. So and I was away enjoying my life in South America. So came back at Christmas in 21. So I'd been like, you know, still late 20s. Pretty uneventful Christmas. Like still feeling okay about my hair. And then back to South America, sort of in January, and then. It was probably the wedding season of that year where it really started to hit home. So one of my best mates is getting married in Greece. It was this beautiful, beautiful place in the Peloponnese. And I remember we'd got there. I think we were a bit later than other people, and I'd come down to the pool. And, you know, I hadn't seen some of my best mates in, you know, we're talking like 12, 18 months because I've been away. And I go down to the pool. I've got my trunks on. I've got my cap on. And then I jump in the pool, and everyone was like, "Wow, Tom, it's really starting to go."
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Yeah, like, but it's so good to see everyone," and stuff like that. And then, you know, as that the you know weekend progressed, honestly, it was one of the best weddings, best weekends. I was an usher at the wedding. He got these beautiful suits made for all of us. And then when it came to some of the pictures that were released and stuff, some were looking like great. I'd gone really short on the sides.
Right.
And there was still like enough on top. And I would probably say that was like the last like
hurrah.
Yeah, last hurrah of hair.
Yeah.
And you know, still some great pictures from the wedding, and you'd probably look at it and go, "Oh, he's still got a good head of hair." But yeah, people were noticing it, commenting on it, but it was still, I'd say, it was still okay at that time. Still quite nice, you know. I was talking to this other guy who shaved his, and he said he shaved it during the pandemic, and he said it looked awful. But he said, like, Tom, I didn't know this guy, but you know, you meet people at weddings, don't you? He's like, but honestly, Tom, I think if you shaved it off, it would look absolutely fine. And then the next time I came back, this was for another friend's wedding in September. So we're, I guess, sort of 3.5 months apart. And then that's when I think it really started to get noticeable. And there were quite a few comments. I remember we went to the wedding and we met up the next day. And I remember, like, some of the comments, the chap who got married, his wife said, the first thing he said, she said to him was, "Oh yeah, Tom's really losing it. It's the first thing I noticed about him."
Oh really?
And
so he told you that afterwards that she'd said that?
Yeah, we were having a few drinks in the pub like the next day, and she'd said that to him, and I was like, "Oh God, okay." And then my other best mate was there, and he was like, "Yeah, Tom, I think it might be time. You know, like, you're looking a lot older with it and stuff like that." And it was getting me down quite a bit then, I must admit.
Yeah.
So this was September. And then, you know, I was back there for sort of 10 days before I went back to Guyana. And then in October 22, so it's been like a month later, I was like, enough's enough. I'm going to do it. I'd taken pictures. I could see it really going at the top. And I went to my barber, who I'd got to know quite well. He's a really nice guy. He'd done all this really short back and sides. And you know, it's sort of the end where he did really short back and sides, and then he spends like 10 seconds on the top.
Yeah.
That's when you sort of know. And it took me a lot of courage to go into the barber shop. I sat down in the chair and I was like, "It's time. I want you to take it off." And he looked at me, moved my head around. Really nice Guyanese guy. Pointed, went like that. "No, you're not ready yet."
Yeah.
So I'd built up all this courage to go and do it and get it off. And this was like, you know, in the middle of towards the end of the summer, the CPL was going on. This was going to be a big thing. I'd have had it off and I'd have gone to the cricket match in the evening and then gone to work the next day. And he was like, "No, I'm not ready to give you a shiny yet." So that was the first time I was like, it's coming off, and it didn't come off.
Right.
So it was disappointing that day.
Yeah, obviously you're easy to convince. Like, you're already nervous about it, and unsure. And then if a guy says to you, "No, you don't," you're like, it's easy to be like, "Oh, okay, thank God," you know, because I was kind of nervous to even do it. So you think like, "Okay, yeah, fine, I won't." And that happens a lot. You know, I think I mentioned to you that the barber that I went to, it was a good like 10 minutes of like, "No, seriously, I'm not leaving until you get it off." So, you know, it happens to a lot of guys when they're up for it, but the barber's like, no, we can salvage this. Like, we can keep you clinging on.
Yeah.
I really want to ask you just quickly a question. You said to, there that, you know, when you went back before that at the your other friend's wedding and down the pub, and you said, I think the words you used were like, it was really like getting you down at that point.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more just on what you mean by that? Like, when you say it's getting you down, what do you mean by that?
I guess it's just like really frustrating when you see like all your mates still with hair and you're like the only one in that friendship group. Don't get me wrong, got other friendship groups, and I'm sure we'll come to that later, where there are like bald guys, but everyone else had like thick heads of hair, and I was there, didn't have it, was really clearly losing my hair, didn't have a +1 at the wedding, you know, all of those sort of things where it does eat away at you and you lose your confidence. And then especially like, and I don't think my, you know, friend's now wife meant that to be a nasty comment about, "Oh, it's the first thing I noticed about Tom." And, you know, I don't think he really meant it to be a nasty comment. It's just, sometimes it's the hard truths, isn't it?
Yeah.
And let's put it another way. Say if I'd put on 2 stone, I guarantee you he wouldn't have said that to me. He wouldn't have said, "Oh, she said you're looking fat." But when it comes to like hair loss, people will say those things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It is. No, that's a really interesting point. That it's still kind of seen as this final. It's okay to like, and I don't know where that comes from. But it's okay to sort of. I mean, not bring it up is not the right word, is it? But it's sort of like, And like you said, it was just a harsh truth, like
Yeah.
a harsh comment, but it's, like you said with your mates and stuff, knocking your hat off, like it is still seen as a bit of like, oh, he can handle it. Like,
Yeah.
sure, he's like, a bit insecure about it or whatever. That's why I'm gonna make the comment or whatever. It's an easy win, it's an easy rise. But at the same time, it is seen as like, even though I'm doing that, it's fine. Like, he can handle it.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's down to the tradition of, not wanting to speak about it, or you don't admit to your friends like, actually, this is really getting me down. Like, nobody wants to say that.
And I never said that.
Yeah, and people don't traditionally say
No.
that. So I wonder if it's like people just assume like, oh yeah, they're having all this trouble with it, but it's only like hair. Like, they get over it or whatever.
Exactly.
But you're right, mate. It is a very interesting thing that is, I think, misunderstood by most people.
Yep.
And like you said, especially mates and stuff it's not even on their radar, like
exactly.
losing their hair. They're hard for them to relate, I think.
Yep.
Interesting. So you go back. No, thanks for elaborating on that, by the way, because I think that's like really the source that other people find themselves in, with like, and it's important to kind of like really mention like what you mean, or like how that feels when you say like feeling down, because other guys will be feeling down, but there are often specifics, like that. So okay, so you're back now. You were pumped to get rid of it. You were like, no, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna get rid now.
Yeah.
Barber convinces you otherwise, and I think it then progresses you go quite a long time after, right?
Yeah, I do. So that's October 22, and it wasn't until the 1st of Jan this year that I did it.
And how old are you then? Sorry, how old are we talking now?
So I guess I'd have been 30 in 22. Yeah,
Okay.
so 32 in May this year.
So what are those What do those 2 years look like?
Yeah, they're getting tough, I guess. Had quite a high profile role in Guyana as well, and I think that maybe progressed things as well with the hair
Stressful,
loss.
you mean?
Yeah. And then I came back at Christmas, so usually come back a couple of times a year. And we went on this great ski trip. Honestly, it was amazing. These are the sort of things that when you're away, you don't get to see your mates. And then we went on this fantastic ski trip, and it was really thin back then, and lots of hats and helmets and stuff like that, so it wasn't too bad. But again, like, friends making comments, and they don't mean it nastily, and I remember we met this young guy from Manchester or whatever, and he was probably about 20, and my mate took my beanie off, and he was like, oh, he's bold, and I was like, no, I'm balding, I'm not bald. So it was like, again, it's that clinging on,
Yeah.
But again, sort of not, I guess, the brunt of the joke. But I'm still.
It was a recurring theme.
Yeah.
For the trip.
No, I wouldn't say it was that bad. But I think by that point, I had accepted it, that it was only a matter of time.
Okay.
Whereas before it was like, okay, how it's going. But I think by then I'd accepted it. But again, picking up that razor and doing it is the hardest thing, and I wasn't ready to do it then.
No.
Because I remember it was 3 lads and a girl, and a girl we know from university.
Is this on the ski trip?
Yeah, it's on the ski trip, and on the last day we got we're just taking pictures, and we got a great picture together. My hair's looking short, but it's looking okay, and that's sometimes you cling on to those pictures that are looking all right.
Right.
But if that was taken from another angle or a bird's eye view, it would be nowhere near your Instagram page.
Okay, yeah. It gives you a bit of like hope for a brief second of like, oh, maybe it's not. Yeah, the same sort of theme.
Yeah.
You said they're a guy from Manchester. Sorry, what did he make a comment as well?
No, well, it was just like my mate was. I don't know.
Oh, just saying to him, like,
yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Yeah, look at this.
And then
how did that conversation come up? Just randomly.
Like après and stuff like that. Everyone's
Right.
having good fun, and we'd met. So we were going to like the same bar every evening for après, and got to know this young lad from Manchester, and he was just like wild, and it was. But again, I think by then,
it was in good jest.
Exactly, and if we look at what happened in, I guess, 18 back in Miami to what are we now? We're sort of 2022. I'm a bit older. I'm a bit more mature. Like there was no way like that was going to really get to me when when I'm 25, 26, it probably is.
You hadn't accepted it
exactly
at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've matured with it along the road as
as
it slowly faded.
Yeah.
And you already feel, I guess you already feel in your gut, like, look, at some point, like, I am just going to get rid of it. And maybe it was that knowledge of, like, I know this is going to go at some point.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe that allows you to just relax. Yeah, like accept it and relax more, knowing that there was a sort of end point to this now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. So you mentioned there that it was January this year. You go on that holiday, and then what sort of tipped you over the edge then? When, you know, because the last few years have been quite sort of, you're doing your thing with work, and you're not happy with the hair, obviously. It would come up in pictures. You're obviously not about to go and do surgery, and that wasn't for you. You made peace with the fact that you will part ways, but you said you really just couldn't. You couldn't do it.
No,
what was the reason for that? Why couldn't you just go and do it, do you think?
I think because the big change, like that change where you go from having hair, even though it's limited, to not having hair, is like a big thing for me anyway. And I'm sure lots of people on the channel watching, it will be the same thing. It's a huge, huge step.
Right.
And almost just like every time I'd go to the barber, you know, the chap in Guyana, it'd be like 0, 0.5, 1. It was like hardly anything on the sides and not much on top. But I would always tell people in the office, it's like, I'm just preparing to go bald.
Right.
And then I head back to South America, knowing that I was probably only got 6 or 7 months left. And, you know, you start noticing it a bit more in like meeting rooms. So we've got like all these Zoom cameras and those cameras that are above. And then you look up at the screen and you're like, oh, wow, that's really not looking great now. And, you know, I would say, great banter in Guyana as well. And, you know, even some of my direct reports would say, oh, Tom, I could see your bald patch there. And it's like, yep, I know. But still getting to that point where you can do it is still so challenging.
It's challenging, yeah. And I think we talked about before, so what were you doing to prepare? It sounds like now, like things, you know, you can have the conversation. You're openly having the conversation about like, look, I know it's bad. I'm going to get rid. So I guess that does go some way to take the pressure off. You know, you're sort of like soft launching it. I think
soft launch.
Someone described it as before. You know, just to gauge the reactions or you know, just put it out into the world first. You know, soft launch is a good way to describe it. And so, what else were you doing, I guess, to kind of prepare for the big moment? I think you mentioned something about the filters and things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you know, there'd be times where I'd get home from work out, cook myself some food, and then, you know, I'd be watching all of your videos on YouTube, and it's like, wow, that guy looks so good after he's done it. And then, Snapchat filters are a big one. So I would go through, like, look at all, like, the bold filters, the ones with beards, the one with sunglasses.
Right.
And then sometimes you'd stumble on the one with, like, full head of hair, and then you'd take that. And you're like, wow, that's what I look like, a full head of hair. It was taking those pictures and looking at them, you know, maybe doing it 1 week, then the next week. And I think, you know, I probably sent you a few as well. And it's that in a weird way does help you sort of prepare, because I think it's fairly realistic as well.
Okay.
But, so gearing myself up for it, I still wasn't ready for it to go, and we'll get onto it in a bit, where I'm like, now it has to go, which came later, sort of to the end of last year, beginning of this year. But the filters was a big thing, and I'm sure there's lots of other blokes out there doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, because you want to know. I mean, that's one of the big apprehensions, right? Is what am I going to look like?
Exactly, the unknown.
The unknown in so many ways. And, you know, dating, how is it going to look? How are people going to react? I mean, that's really what keeps us stuck in not being able to. But we mentioned before when we had a chat about, I think, until the pain of the current situation, in terms of like how the balding is impacting your life and your self-esteem and all the rest of it, your confidence, until the pain of that, until the, how did I describe it? Until the sort of the strength of the fear of the unknown is sort of less than the pain, the strength of the pain that you feel in the current situation. Obviously, you don't do anything about it until it kind of tips over to that point where you're like, no, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go there. Let's go there. So, what was the tipping point for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I moved to America in sort of August of that year, and started going on a few dates, and that's where I like really noticed it. Like it was really going, and I'd be like first into the restaurant, and I'd make sure I'd be sitting in the right position, and then never would want them to sort of see the back of my head, because I think the front is more manageable, but like the back is just like a no-go area, right?
Right.
So I really started noticing that, and then I guess it would have been Christmas when I came back to England, and my friend has a pub down near Yelverton in Walkhampton, and yeah, just some of the comments there. One of the punters who I know quite well said something about like, oh, you should have a goldfish in that pond on your head or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I think by this point you are sort of taking it as more of a joke now, and like the inevitable will happen. And then I remember doing the Christmas draw, and that was on like Facebook live feed, and just like watching that back, I'm like, oh, this isn't good. But I think throughout that Christmas, it was like, it's probably time. And then I'll always remember, and this was maybe one of the tipping points. I've gone to see Argyle away at Southampton. I think it was a Friday night game, and
I went to that game.
Yeah, we lost 1-0. No, we lost 2-1. 2-1. That terrible offside decision, that was shocking.
Yeah.
I don't know how he gave that offside. And then we were all going back to Plymouth, and loads of people.
You must not have seen me there, right? Otherwise, you would have said hello.
I would have, but then I probably wouldn't, because I still wasn't quite there.
Maybe. I went with Dad. Anyway, so carry on.
Yeah.
Yes, you went to that.
And I remember on the way home, we stopped at that weird village that Prince Charles created.
Dorchester.
Yep. And there's a McDonald's there, and McDonald's I used to go to at university when we'd go and play golf against Bournemouth, and I knew it quite well.
Nice, yeah. Me too. I always go in there.
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? I remember walking in.
Parking's shocking there.
It is, especially when you got like 2,000 Argyle fans hungry for a burger on the way home. And I remember walking in, and I'm sure you'd have had it and other people have had it, but as soon as CCTV, and then when you can see the top of your head, and I just saw it then, and this was 29th of December, I think it was, I was like, Tom, it's got to go. And then I saw this other guy walk in, probably a similar age to me, like skinhead, bald, looked great. And I was like, that's going to be me. That's going to be me. So I decided then, and I'd been building up to it the whole of that Christmas, 1st of January, after I'd been to the Argyle game against Birmingham. I was driving back up to London to go back to America a couple of days afterwards. I was like, 1st of January, after I drive back from Plymouth, I'm shaving it off. I'm getting that razor and I'm doing it, because I know I'm going to be on my own. I'm not going to see anyone in person that I know for 3 or 4 days. I think also I felt more confident that I wouldn't be seeing friends and family for at least a couple of months. So I'd have time to like it if I didn't like it.
No harsh judgment.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I had a great day out at Argyle. It was a great game, 3-3. I drove back. I remember listening to, I think it was Newcastle, Liverpool on TalkSport, building myself up for it. Got into the flat in London, got that razor out and did it, and it is the most liberating thing I've ever done. Honestly.
Yeah, well, let's. I forgot to mention it. Luckily, the power of editing. I mean, let's see how you got to this point.
Oh, it feels so weird. Oh, this feels so strange. Wow. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, mate. I mean, let's have the reveal. You've don't forget you're wearing the old hat.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we did it, right? That's why I wore the hat, because you got so many people, that have hair and then do it and then show the big reveal. But
They
I
wanna know
guess
how it
it's
looks.
time for it to all come off, and I feel fantastic with it, honestly.
Was that an instant thing?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
it was.
It
yeah?
was. I mean, when I first did it, there's two people I called. So I called Mike, my friend, who's part of my Plymouth lads, who's bald, and he did it much earlier than me, and he's actually younger than me. And I just called him. I said, "I've done it," and he said, "What have you done?" I was like, "I've shaved it off, and
Yeah.
I feel amazing." And then I think the next thing I did was message you.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wouldn't be here without the channel. And I'm not exaggerating there. It's the absolute truth.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to let you know. And I know we'd spoken about it before. I wasn't one of the subscribers. I was one that would open YouTube, dip into
lurker.
it, and
Right.
be there watching it for 2-3 hours, and then do the same thing the next week. And I just encourage guys to do it. I left it too long, and I'm sure some of the pictures you're going to be showing, you can see that as well. And then I didn't go back to America for a couple of days, and I was running around London through Chiswick, noticing myself in shop windows, like, wow,
Yeah.
I don't have any hair anymore. And I remember jumping on the first couple of Zoom calls with my colleagues in America because I was working remotely for a few days. And they were like, I was like, yep, going to have to tell you something this year. I've decided to shave my hair off.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, okay, great. And then when I went into the office, I think it was that Thursday. So after I flew back, I was like, oh, wow, that's different,
Yeah.
And it was, I hadn't told anyone I was going to do it. And then after a couple of days, everyone just accepts it and thinks, wow, that's the new you. And, luckily I've had lots of positive comments,
Yeah.
This is the first time I've come back since Christmas, since
Okay.
January.
Right.
And
So you've been able to see more people.
exactly. And when I was at my mate's pub, someone I know reasonably well, he said, yes, Fraser sent us a picture of you. And you're like, you look $1 million. It looks so different. And
Yeah.
he's going as well. And I'm like, yeah, my only advice is, mate, just don't keep it too long.
Yeah. Do you feel more comfortable this time, like coming back, presenting yourself in front of people? You don't feel like you're kind of like you're not holding anything back, and is that how it feels? What is exact specifically, do you think, that the change, like the difference that you noticed?
Like the confidence. I think we'd spoken about like a tick or whatever. Like as soon as the camera was coming out, it was running my hands through my head. And now sometimes the camera comes out and I still do it. I'm like, what am I doing? There's nothing to move.
Yeah.
I think certainly at the start, when I first went back to America, it was quite interesting because you're sort of telling people, oh, I've shaved my hair, and then they could see it. And then when I've come back here, I haven't actually been saying anything. My mother and my godmother came and saw me, and I didn't say anything to her, and she just said, Tom, you're looking so well, you're looking great.
Yeah.
And I didn't say, I've shaved my head, and it's pretty obvious I've shaved my head.
Yeah.
So it was that difference and that confidence and just owning it and not being worried about something.
Yeah. Not constantly having that on your mind, right?
Yeah.
What was your first thought? Like, can you remember like your first immediate sort of thoughts as you're kind of getting to that point where it's gone?
Yeah.
Because you can't see it yet, right? You're doing it, and then you reach that point where you can kind of first see it.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like you first see yourself, and it is a change. No matter how sort of thin it is a change.
Yep.
Can you remember your first sort of thoughts in that moment at all?
It just felt amazing. Honestly, it like liberating was the best. I'm sure as people are watching the clip.
So was it more just the relief that you were finally doing it, rather than like, oh, I like how it looks or things like that?
I'd say both.
Right.
Yeah, it was like the relief that I'm no longer going to be worrying about it, and then I guess the bonus was, wow, I actually think this looks quite nice.
Right.
And I'm sure people watching it's like side.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've done that. It's got to go. And then when you make that big stroke down the middle and don't remove that much hair because there's not that much hair left, it feels amazing.
Yeah. And we did talk about like dating. Well, you mentioned there going on dates. You'd be there and you would strategically position yourself, you know, and be sort of have that on your mind. And I obviously said to you then, that's impacting you on that day. You can't fully be present. You can't fully be in the moment and having the sort of conversations that you need to be having when there's something else at at the back of your mind. It's like going to meet someone and you got to go in 10 minutes and you got to keep an eye on the time or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you're not fully there, right? So I know you did mention like you have been you had been. I know you're in another relationship now, so we don't have to go into too much detail. But obviously, you did get back out there on the apps and things like that. And so I'm sure you had a few dates, right? You had to meet the woman that you're with now. So did you notice a change in yourself in that area as well? Because that's a big one for a lot of guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the confidence goes through the roof again. You feel like you're 21. You feel like
fresh.
Yeah, you do. You almost feel like you've got a full head of hair, even though you don't. You're reverting back to that confidence that you had before.
It's not a thing.
No,
it's no
exactly,
longer a thing, right?
Exactly.
As it wasn't a thing when you didn't have balding.
Yep.
When you kind of reach that end point of acceptance and whatnot, it's once again no longer a thing. You can kind of get back fully into yourself. Is that a good way to describe it?
Absolutely. And then I think when we were in the cafe, I spoke about how when I first started going dating again, like early January, I obviously didn't have any like pictures with me without hair, and I was still getting the matches and stuff. And then I'd be like, decided to shave my hair off 1st of January. I don't think I look that different, but just want to let you know. And everyone's like, oh, that's fine,
Yeah.
And the girls would joke back and be like, oh yeah, I've put on 60 pounds since my pictures.
Yeah,
so.
nice.
And then, then you take some selfies, you get involved in pictures, you post them, and you develop that confidence all over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, most liberating thing I've ever done, and I still think it's a subject that people don't really want to talk about. And for me to be able to tell my story today means a lot to me, because I know there's so many blokes out there like me that hopefully will take inspiration from it, because I did from the channel. And yeah, it's been one journey, one hell of a journey. Probably, if we think 2016, probably when I first started noticing, it was talking like 8 years.
8 years, yeah. Amazing. No, mate, honestly, like I said, thank you so much. And
No problem at
I'm
all.
so grateful that you're here, that we're doing this. It's been great to meet you. I mean, great opportunity, right, seeing as we're both here in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And best of luck to you, mate, when you go back out to America and beyond.
Yeah.
And no, mate, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I just thank you for wanting to share it.
Yep.
Because like I said, there'll be someone that will listen to this, watch this, and there'll be something in your story, or it'll be something about the way you look or the way you speak or whatever it is, that it will be very relatable, and that's highly likely to be the thing that will give them that kind of final push that I think a lot of the people that watch the channel are after, whether it's just finding that final acceptance or getting the courage to take some sort of action on it or make some sort of positive change with it. And beyond all of that, I think it's important to even just have the conversation. We mentioned that as well,
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Something that a lot of guys don't want to talk about, and I think it takes a lot to it's a bit, at one point it was a huge insecurity,
Yeah.
And here you can be now totally just open, chatting about it, and that alone is a great thing. So thank you so much, mate. Real
Cheers, buddy.
pleasure.
Really
Real pleasure.
appreciate it.